Bonsoir, Monsieur Wagner. Monsieur Wagner?
Yes, hello, bonjour. Ça va?
Okay.
Sorry.
Plusieurs fois, c'est ça?
Pardon, je m'excuse?
OK. Vous avez essayé plusieurs fois de vous connecter?
Non, c'est la première fois.
OK, parce que là, on en a 3 Z. Mais c'est pas grave, on va vivre avec ça, là. On essaiera de comprendre la difficulté.
OK.
Alors, bonsoir, Monsieur Wagner. Vous êtes accompagné de Monsieur?
Amit Zafir.
Bonjour.
D'accord.
C'est mon collègue à Amcor, notre compagnie.
On va juste demander qui est Ziki.
Mais Ziki, c'est le propriétaire de Amcor Holdings, puis nous sommes 2 employés de Ziki.
Ah, d'accord. D'accord.
Ça marche.
Merci. Il y a un petit problème technique, là, parce qu'on a comme 3 Z, mais c'est vraiment pas grave, là. OK?
OK.
Je pense que c'est Ziki qui essaie de rentrer la conférence de son.
Ah oui, c'est
de
ça.
son maison.
C'est possible que Ziki essaie de rentrer la conférence de chez lui.
Ah, OK, d'accord. Alors, je vous rappelle qu'on est ce soir en audition de votre opinion. On va vous donner 10 minutes pour présenter votre opinion et les commissaires feront un échange avec vous pendant 10 minutes.
Parfait.
Ça vous va?
Oui.
Les questions seront en français, mais si vous aimez mieux faire votre présentation en anglais, c'est possible.
Oui, on l'a préparé en anglais. Je ne savais pas si on était conseillé que ce serait mieux de parler en français. C'est sûr we would have done that. Mais je peux répondre à les questions en français, mais pour la présentation, pour le lettre, je vais le lire en anglais.
OK. Est-ce que vous allez lire toute votre mémoire?
Non. Juste
OK. Est-ce que vous avez une présentation PowerPoint? Non.
Non, pas vraiment. Pas à l'instant, à ce instant.
C'est pas une obligation, là. C'est qu'il y a des gens qui en ont, il y a des gens qui en ont pas. C'est vraiment pas une obligation.
Yeah. No, but just if we had, I guess, more time to prepare, we certainly have, further plans that we could potentially share down the road. Mais pour l'instant, c'est vraiment juste ce lettre, puis les autres documents que nous avons envoyés ou submitted, c'est ça.
D'accord. Alors, on vous laisse la parole.
D'accord, merci. So obviously we are Amcor Holdings. We're the owners of the properties located between 1915 and 1933 Sainte-Catherine. These properties are at the northeast corner of Towers. We are surprised and we're frustrated by the city's decision to lower the allowable buildable density on the north side of the St. Catherine Street between St. Towers and St. Mark from 25 meters to 16 meters. This is something that we only became aware of over the past week through conversations with a neighboring property owner. We feel as though this decision is being made arbitrarily to offset and support the approved increased density directly across the street at 1920 St. Catherine Street West. Our building, as currently approved, was built in the 1800s and is in a less than desirable condition. While the property has been identified by the city as architecturally significant and displaying Victorian attributes, a closer examination of the property will show a building in dire condition with various materials applied to various segments of the building to maintain its structural function and integrity, and is currently in dire need of improvement. In fact, this is consistent with most of the properties along St. Catherine Street.
Je suis obligée de vous couper. Est-ce que c'est possible d'avoir la caméra directement sur vous?
Oui, pas de problème.
Voilà, c'est parfait. Puis on changera quand ça sera le temps. Parfait. C'est juste pour que ce soit plus facile pour les gens qui vont le visionner demain. D'accord?
Aucun problème.
Excuse. Désolé. Allons-y.
So most of the aforementioned quality Victorian architecture in the area is found further up or further down from the streets that run perpendicular to St. Catherine. These are found on Fort, St. Matthew, and St. Mark. Along St. Catherine, immediately to the east, at the corner of St. Mark and St. Catherine, is an already existing 14-story high-rise residential building. The prominence of the looming buildings of the Concordia campus along Guy Street also dominate the surrounding horizon. Additionally, immediately to our west is a development project with a reported 13-story construction. As it relates to height and density, the existing eclectic mix of low-rise and high-rise buildings to the east and west of towers do not seem to set any urban planning pattern. By now reducing the street's potential for redevelopment, the city risks having the most run-down properties between St. Mark and Guy remain in their current state, despite the obvious need for improvement. This obviously includes our property at 1915 to 1933 St. Catherine Street West. Any proposed improvement would further clean up and improve the commercial frontage along St. Catherine, while potentially adding a wide diversity of new housing above street level. The city will always retain the opportunity through a projet particulier to ensure control of the qualitative aspects of any projects and its conformity with objectives that respect the character of the neighborhood, sustainable development, urban integration, human scale at ground level, and the need for social and affordable housing. All of this said, our property, as well as many others along St. Catherine, need an incentive to improve the built form and renovate. We believe an increase to 45 meters along St. Catherine corridor towards Guy would be fundamentally beneficial to the street and the consolidation of the downtown core by providing the necessary incentive to invest in and improve the surrounding area. As such, we believe that a reduction of our development potential will have the opposite effect, and many properties in need of repair and requalification will deteriorate. We're happy to now take questions.
Ah, vous êtes déjà prêt aux questions. OK. Monsieur Vieira?
Oui. J'aimerais savoir si vous avez déjà un projet ou des projets spécifiques que vous envisagez développer à court ou à moyen terme.
Sorry, so vous demandez si on a déjà fait des autres développements ou si on a un projet spécifique pour ce...
Donc, pour les propriétés qui sont dans le secteur que nous traitons ici aujourd'hui, est-ce que vous avez un projet spécifique ou pas encore?
À l'instant, on n'a pas un projet spécifique parce que we were hoping to get the zoning to go to 45 meters because for us, that makes sense. Our neighbors are at 45 meters. We'd like to be there. We're very gung-ho about producing a residential tower in that area and beautifying the area and working with the city to come up with a plan that would allow us to build to the same height as our neighbors, and we would be ready to do that if we had the correct zoning in place.
Obviously, any project of scale requires economic feasibility in order to move forward with. To date, we haven't had the necessary height required in order to justify any major investment. Given the current state of the property, there is current in-place tenants there. The property as is produces a positive cash flow on an annual basis. We would very much like to redevelop the property to integrate a new structure that is more representative of the downtown core that we envision. However, that requires some sort of economic viability in order to go forward with that. At a proposed plan of 16 meters, the project will never be economically viable for us to undertake. As such, we have not yet undertaken plans to redevelop the site. However, it is something that we've had discussions with architects, and we've also spent time understanding what is occurring in the surrounding areas so that we can better integrate any future project into our planning.
Okay, so if I understand, you agree to maintain or to have 45 meters on Sainte-Catherine. Would be the same all the old sector, or will support reducing the 25 to 16 on the others in the interest area?
So we are not in support of reducing the proposed density from 25 meters to 16 meters. We in fact believe that for the long-term success and viability of St. Catherine Street West, specifically as it relates to Tower and St. Mark, we would suggest increasing the density from 25 to 45 meters to allow for an economically viable redevelopment project to be undertaken on the site.
Okay. What about the protection of the buildings of heritage and architectural value in the area?
So, and we've seen this in lots of different areas, including the Old Port, where you have very large construction companies that have come in and maintained the original structures and the original facades of the buildings that are in place. Now, I don't know if you've walked the specific street that we're talking about, but if you go and you take a close look at those buildings, they're in very bad shape. But when you go to these new projects in the Old Port or in other places in the city, when these guys redevelop, they maintain the original structure, but they're not just maintaining it. They're coming up and they're cleaning it up. They're making it look the way it was meant to look when it was first built. And of course, you know, if we're going to get the 45-meter density allowance, that's something we would happily, you know, work together with the city. And I implore all of you that are here today listening, and anyone else that's listening online, you know, to go walk the street and take a close look at these buildings and realize that, like, you know, if you do increase the density, you can still maintain the integrity of these beautiful buildings, but have them be incorporated into these beautiful, you know, projects that are being built as well. And you see it all over the place, and you see it in cities across the world that have, you know, specific architectural sites that they like to maintain. And, you know, realistically, if you guys decide to shrink our density or even to maintain the current density, there just isn't the capital in place to bring those buildings up to, like, whether it's the former glory or an even, you know, an even newer, more prominent glory, because it doesn't make any sense economically.
I think it's also important to distinguish which properties themselves have that Victorian charm that's been alluded to and have the heritage qualification. I believe more of those buildings are along St. Mark and Tower and St. Matthew, between St. Catherine and de Maisonneuve, rather than along St. Catherine itself. If you walk the street along St. Catherine, for the most part, you know, many of these buildings are over 100 years old, do not necessarily possess that Victorian charm. For example, our building has been improved over time with metal and stucco, and really does not integrate the original architecture at all into the property. So I think it was important to keep in context the actual assets that have the architectural and structural integrity and those that do not. I think if you look specifically at our building on the north side of St. Catherine between Tower and St. Mark, you'll see a building that is more of an eyesore than it is possessing any Victorian attributes or characteristics.
You know, at the same time, you know, continued development in the corridor is going to produce new jobs, new opportunities for people. It's just, I think you're talking about an area of the city that for many years has been pretty derelict, and you're seeing, you know, a lot of new developments coming into that area and increasing, you know, the overall, I would say, character of the street. And so, you know, we're proposing that, look, hey, our neighbors directly across the street from us in all directions now have, you know, 45 meters of density. And so what we're going to be stuck being this little pocket sort of, you know, in between everybody else with 45 meters. And, you know, it's just, it's almost like maintaining these awful buildings next to these these beautiful things that are being built. And you know, like we said, if it came down to, you know, the city saying, well, we'd like to maintain the aesthetic value, and again, go see those buildings and you tell me if that's something worth maintaining. And if it is, and there's a way to do it while integrating it into a larger project, we are obviously open to that.
Madame Atomic?
I have a question about the role of property owners in the development of the downtown. Can you tell us a bit about how you see yourself within the development of the downtown? Like, what role would you like to play in that?
Sure, and I think that's a really important question to highlight. You know, there are many investment firms that come into various different cities and want to plant their flag with the biggest, boldest, newest project. I think it's important to note that we are a very local, passionate, and proud Montreal-based firm. I think that the integrity of the downtown core is at the utmost priority for us. And I think, you know, being a local group, we really place a priority and emphasis on the project that will be delivered, because we care about not just the success of this specific project, but the long-term success and viability of the downtown core in the greater narrative of the growing success of Montreal as a city. So, you know, we will place the appropriate attention to every component and aspect of a potential future project at this site. You know, the principals of this firm will dedicate a substantial amount of their time in order to ensure the success of this project. And we obviously want to work with all parties within the region, both political, social, and other developers, to ensure a successful redevelopment and revitalization of the area.
Yeah, and if you want, yeah.
No, you go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, if you have any, you know, follow-up questions to that, because I mean that's a topic, you know, I think that's sort of the abstract, that's the elevator pitch. But you know, obviously we'd be willing to work, you know, with the city to ensure that we're building sustainably, that we're, you know, taking note and making sure that we're dealing with urban integration on the right level and human scale on the right level, and so that we're also, we'd like to, as a local based group, we feel that we owe the city and our own reputations, you know, the idea of doing things on a socially just and right way. You know, we're not some big developer coming in from, you know, outside of the city or outside of the country or anything else. We're local guys, and so, you know, we're here. Our offices are a few streets away. If there's anything, you can come knock on our door and we can come, you know, directly to you guys when, you know, God willing, all of this is over and we don't have to do this in Zoom anymore. And so, you know, the idea is that we think that, you know, based on everything going on around us, it would make sense for us to have that same density, because we continue to be able to work with you guys. And it just seems sort of very arbitrary to not only not give us the same density as the surrounding buildings around us, but to also then decrease our density, which to us really just came as like a surprise, because we've been very excited about potentially increasing our density to be able to go out and develop the street and be able to have pride in our hometown that we have been able to do something on, you know, if not Montreal's most prominent and well-known street, at least, you know, one of them. And so I can't explain how much of a disappointment it was to get, you know, this information last week and sort of say, like, I can't believe this. You know, we had this talk years ago when we were at 25 and we asked you guys to go to 45 and we were optimistic, and, you know, nothing came of it. And now to sort of be told that the plan is to shrink our density, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. So
maybe just a follow-up question about your sort of social approach that you mentioned.
Yeah.
There's lots of people that we hear tonight and in different opinions that sort of mention the fact that they don't want higher buildings and they don't, they think that would have a negative impact on the neighborhood. So I was wondering how you see that.
Well, so I'd be interested. So we weren't privy to a lot of the other conversations. We were sort of told that we had to log in at a specific time before. But I guess in sort of coming back to you, obviously we understand that I don't necessarily see how that would lower the livability or the idea in that neighborhood, since I would imagine that any development that we did would probably include affordable units, would create a few extra jobs in the area, would continue to sort of beautify the area, and I understand potentially there may be some complaints from locals about saying, oh, the high rises. Montreal has one downtown core. It's a very big city that's quite spread out, and I think that we would increase the amount of affordable units within the city by being able to build this, specifically in the downtown area. So there'd be more of an opportunity, if you think about it, for those people that are potentially complaining about the high-rise factor, or that it's going to affect things from the standpoint of potentially creating what I guess is like this idea of gentrification. But the reality is, we're talking about making this a safer area, a more beautiful area, and increasing the amount of potentially, socially available apartments, as well as, whatever else is built there. So I definitely, I contend with the people that are saying that. If you want to go and see buildings with lower density, that's easy. Just go to where all the, as my colleague suggested earlier, go to all those perpendicular streets with actual beautiful Victorian architecture. Those aren't going anywhere.
I think the important component of what Alex just said is to really highlight that, residential densification of the downtown core is really the utmost important strategy to really contain that urban sprawl. The downtown core is such for a reason, and I think it's the most viable place in order to create new housing in the city that will be available to individuals at an affordable price point.
Thank you.
Maybe just regarding the issue of we call the Îlot Sainte-Catherine West, I think you called it the Servakis project. Do we have any opinion concerning that project?
No, honestly, we're in support of any investment and further improvement of the Sainte-Catherine Street West node
of our city. This is an area of the city that for so many years, I'm not that old of a guy, but I remember growing up and always wondering, why is this section of Sainte-Catherine Street so derelict? Why is it that like you walk from this section and everything looks like it's falling apart, and then you reach the big, beautiful office towers and the beautiful stores, and finally we're starting to see beautiful development along the area. And there's always going to be pushback, but I mean, we're seeing Montreal become this, economic, booming, wonderful city again, where people are flocking back. I grew up in a generation where a lot of, I would say, the most educated and the smartest were leaving Montreal. And I'm finally starting to see now people coming back, born here, that went to go work abroad, and they're saying, wow, Montreal is flourishing. And so when I see, really beautiful buildings that are going to go up and be well maintained and create new jobs and have elements of social housing and are going to bring, a flurry of business to these streets and beautify the area. Why would it? I wouldn't understand why I would have something against that. We have so many beautiful cultural centers in the city, and this area, I don't think, is a beautiful cultural center. I mean, a lot of this strip is it's been sad to say, but is really something, a part of the city that's been neglected. And now it looks like there's finally an opportunity here to make this like a beautiful Montreal corridor. And I just, for the life of me, can't understand why you would want to protect, our little row of really this falling apart building as opposed to putting something beautiful up, maintaining, that certain aesthetic, whether it's maintaining the facades and bringing more people back into the downtown core. And so we have nothing against the Sergakis project, but what we do have is we're just very disappointed that there would be, this idea of of bringing our zoning down as opposed to granting us the same rights that our neighbors have and allowing us to be a part of beautifying this corridor in the city. So.
Merci beaucoup. Notre temps est écoulé. Les 20 minutes sont finies. Je voudrais vous remercier. Malheureusement, Monsieur Wagner, on a notre nom, mais quand j'ai demandé votre nom à vous, monsieur, ça n'a pas été enregistré. Donc, pouvez-vous le redire?
Monsieur Zephyr, Amit Zephyr.
Hamid?
Zephyr.
D'accord. Merci beaucoup. Alors, nous vous remercions. Nous allons relire toutes les opinions, faire l'analyse et nous devrions écrire le rapport pour qu'il soit produit dans les mois qui viennent. Nous vous remercions beaucoup.
Just before you go, if there's anything else you need from us, any more communication, more detail, please don't hesitate. Really.
Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Thank you so much for tonight.
Merci, bonne soirée. Au revoir.